So Hare Krishna, we are starting our 5th Gita lesson today and we will be doing chapter 2. I actually want to finish the verses 14 all the way to 30 today, and I want to tell you some stories also, especially the ones which Niranjan had wanted to know. So we will go through those stories. We will do the verses and stories first, and then I want us all to practice some chanting. Okay, this time in the second Zoom session. So let's pray together. You can keep yourself on mute and you can pray with me. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin iti namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrindam. Now you can put your hands and say with me, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. So today, in fact, before we go to the Gita, we will start with the story. Okay. So in Mahabharata, in which we find the Gita, the central characters, we find that many of these central characters, they were not born normally. They were born out of divinity or unusual ways of birth. So the ways that they were born was not the usual ways of birth. Okay, so that is why sometimes it is difficult for people to believe and they think that it is a myth. But we don't know what were the conditions in those days, how much science was, had progressed, and we don't know what could have been possible. So let's see the story of how Karavas and Pandavas were born. Okay. So as I had told you earlier, Bhishma was the grandsire in the Kuru dynasty, and he was ruling Hastinapura on behalf of his mother Satyavati. So more details and historically we will go little by little. Whenever we do a story, you will understand better. Okay, so after his father King Shantanu had died, Bhishma was ruling on behalf of his mother. He was waiting for his half brothers Chitrangada and Vichitravirya to become bigger and take over the throne. Because they had died, because Chitrangada and Vichitravirya, his half brothers, had died. He was just taking care of the throne till Dhritarashtra, Vidura and Pandu were grown up enough to take over the throne. Dhritarashtra was the eldest son. Yeah. Good morning, Arav. Good to see you joined. He's just joining to audio. Hare Krishna, Arav.
Hare Krishna, ma'am.
So we are just starting with the story of birth of Kauravas and Pandavas, and I was talking about how Bhishma was just taking care of the throne because Chitrangada and Vichitravirya had both died, and he was waiting for the three boys Dhritarashtra, Vidura and Pandu to grow up. Now Dhritarashtra was actually the eldest and the strongest, but because he was blind, he was actually not eligible to sit on the throne. Vidura was on top in moral and state affairs, but he was born of a maid, and so he also could not be enthroned according to the rules in those days. So Pandu, he had no equal in archery. He was the youngest, but he was considered to be suitable to be the next king. Okay, so that is how Pandava's father Pandu, he was suitable to be the next king, and that is why Pandavas were supposed to be, his son Pandavas were considered to be the rightful heir to the throne after that. Now, Dhritarashtra had married Gandhari. He was blind, right? He had married Gandhari. She was a princess of the kingdom of Gandhara. And because her husband was blind, she tied a silken bandage on her eyes for all time thereafter. She always tied the bandage on her eyes. Pandu, now what did he do? He had married Pritha or Kunti. She was a damsel of matchless charm, very beautiful. And then he also married Madri, also a princess of immense grace. Now once when Saint Durvasa Long ago, when Kunti was a girl, he had visited Kunti's father. Okay? You can hear me, all of you? Niranjan, the story I am saying because you had requested the story.
Yes, ma'am.
Alright. Okay. So, when Kunti was a young girl, the sage Durvasa had visited Kunti's father's palace. Now, usually sage Durvasa has, habit of getting very angry and cursing. But this time, he saw the great devotion of Kunti. Kunti was serving this sage Durvasa with so much of devotion that he was very pleased, and he granted her an incantation. Incantation means mantra. He taught her one mantra or an incantation, using which, if she will just pray to any god and then she will say the incantation, the god will appear and will grant her a son. Okay? So, now let's see what happened. After Saint Durvasa left, Kunti wanted to try this incantation. So, though she was not yet married, she just was very curious. She wanted to try it out. So, she prayed and she said the incantation by invoking the sun god. And the sun god appeared before her. So, all this, it appears very unusual for us. But we don't know the kind of powers which people would get through deep meditation in those days. So we cannot understand how all this happened in those days. So, but the mantra that she said was so powerful that sun god himself appeared and said that you will get an illustrious son, my son, who will be born with divine earrings and an armor on his bust. Surya Dev also said that my son will be known as a great donor. He will always give things for donation. He will be very generous, and he will never send anyone back empty handed. Now Kunti was afraid of disgrace because she had got this baby before she was married to anyone, just by using the mantra. So what does she do? She puts the baby in a basket and she floats it off in the river Ganga. The baby came to be known later as Radheya or Karna, and he was brought up by Adhiratha, who had found the baby. Adhiratha was a charioteer of Hastinapur, and his wife Radha, they both together brought up Karna. Okay, so that is how Karna, who was actually the eldest son of Kunti, that's how he was born. But she had already given away to the river Ganga, and so she was not aware of what happened to him for many years. Now King Pandu, as a ruler, he had conquered territory. So now you know that after she got this baby, she gave it away, then she got married to Pandu. And King Pandu, as a ruler, Ritika has also joined today. Good to see Ritika. Okay, has Ritika joined by audio? Okay, so okay, fine. I can't see Ritika yet. She had joined. Alright, anyway, so King Pandu, when he was ruling, he conquered territory after territory, and he brought immense wealth to Hastinapura. And this wealth was given to him because he would defeat so many kings. He was a very great archer, right? I had told you earlier. So now Pandu wanted to spend some time after so many conquests. King Pandu wanted to spend some time in the lap of nature. So he went off. He gave the kingdom to Dhritarashtra. He said, you take care of the kingdom for some time. I want to go and spend some time in the forest because I have been doing so many conquests. So once when he was hunting in the forest, he shot arrows at two deer who were mating. Okay, so they were involved in mating. The sage and the hind were actually, they were not deer. They were sage Kingdom and his wife, who were, as deer, they were enjoying themselves. So when the arrow hit sage as a deer, he cried in acute pain and he cursed the king. He said, you have killed a couple when they were mating, so you will also die a similar death. So very sadly, when King Pandu heard this, he decided that he will not, spend time with his queens. Instead, he will become a saint because if he will get involved with his wives, he would die because of the curse of the sage. So seeing the king very sad because he did not have any sons yet, Kunti tells the secret about the incantation or the mantra that she had learnt to King Pandu. And King Pandu, he persuaded her to invoke Dharmaraja, okay? And the king of death, the Yama, the king of death, Dharmaraja, he says King Pandu asked her to invoke him and get a son from him. And that is how she bore Yudhishthira first. Now let's see what happened in the meantime in the kingdom of Hastinapura. So they are in the forest right now. Gandhari, what happens is, she also, when she was young, she was a huge devotee of Lord Shiva. And she had been blessed by sage Vedvyas to have 100 sons. And she had also become pregnant. But for 2 years she was carrying the baby in her womb, and she was not delivering the child. And when she heard the news that a radiant son was born to Kunti in the forest, she became very frustrated, and in her anger she hit her own womb with great force. And because of that she soon delivered, but she delivered a mass of flesh. She didn't deliver a baby, instead she delivered a mass of flesh. So before I go on to the story, I want to tell you that the source that I have taken is, there's a YouTube channel called Hindu Saga, and I have a Mahabharata book also. So from there I am telling you these stories. Okay. So what happens is, she gets very angry. Now she hit her own womb and she delivered a mass of flesh, and she was so angry and disheartened. She called upon sage Vyasa. She gave him the news. She also expressed that you promised me that I'll be blessed with 100 sons, but look what happened. And sage Vyasa comforted her, said, don't worry, my words will not be false. He was very sure it won't be false. And what did he do? He asked Gandhari to get 100 pots filled with ghee ready. And he used some, his own powers, and he sprinkled some holy water on the mass of flesh. He cut the flesh into 100 pieces. And Gandhari at that time said, I wish I have a daughter also. So he cut off an extra flesh and he added this to 101 pots. They were all put into pots. So now we have, hospitals, we have incubation chambers and babies are delivered. We have test tube babies. But in those days, there was special science had advanced in a very different way, and we are not even aware of what all were possible. They had a lot of power by meditation also. They had a lot of powers of mantras and all that, which we are not aware now. So that is how the 101 children were there put into those pots, and after many months Vyasa saw the first child was born from one of the pots, and that first born child they called him Duryodhana. The same day that Duryodhana was born, the second son was born to Pandu also, that is to Kunti, and she got Bhima, the second son, by invoking Vayudeva. So Bhima was the son of Vayudeva. And Arjuna she got by invoking Lord Indra. 100 sons and 1 daughter were born to Gandhari, and slowly what happened, there is also the story where Madri, she also requests, when Pandu asks Kunti to please teach the mantra to Madri also, the second wife of Pandu. And she teaches Madri, and Madri also uses the mantra or the incantation, and she invokes Ashwini Kumaras. Okay, and they are also gods, and they because of they are coming forward in front of Madri, and they blessed her with twins, Nakula and Sahadeva. So Pandu, after these 5 children were born, one day he was embracing Madri, and as he embraced her, he fell dead because of the curse. And Madri, because she was heartbroken, she sat on the pyre of Pandu, and she also gave up her life. And the saints who were living in the forest, what did they decide? Now that Kunti was alone, Pandu also had died, Madri also had died. So they decided to take Kunti and the 5 Pandavas to Hastinapura and hand them over to Bhishma and Satyavati. So that is how the 5 Pandava boys, who were young, handsome, very righteous with divine powers, they came and started living in Hastinapura, making Duryodhana and all his brothers very, very jealous. Okay, and that is after that, I had told you the story of how the Mahabharata war started. So, how was the story? Do you all understand the story? How these Kauravas and Pandavas were born?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, okay. So now let's quickly go back and revise the first part that we finished of chapter 2. Chapter 1 I am not revising today. We will just understand the chapter 1 we had done actually last class. From the first verse of chapter 2 we finished till the 13th verse, if you remember. So in the beginning we have Krishna who is scolding Arjuna, how come you are feeling so disappointed? It's not the correct emotion to feel. So he actually scolds or chastises Arjuna. Okay, and Arjuna again expresses all the reasons why he doesn't want to fight, and the best part is because of his extreme sorrow and his compassion and all those reasons, he approaches Krishna as a student. Okay, he accepts Krishna as a guru and he approaches Krishna as a student, which makes Krishna smile and be happy, because now he is going to be able to say the divine message which he wanted to give everyone. Okay. Okay, is Ritika here? Okay, Ritika, Hare Krishna, good to see you. I missed you last class, you weren't there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, alright. So, in chapter 2, we finished this crisis management. How does he manage his crisis? By asking Krishna to become his guru. Okay, Sridevi auntie has also joined. So, yeah, she's still connecting to the audio. Alright. So, moving on, I wanted all of you to learn this particular shloka, which was Karpanya dosho upahata svabhava prichhami tvam dharma sammudha cheta yat shreyasya nishchitam bruhi tanme shishyasteham shadhimam tvam prapannam. So this was the turning point of this war, which has not even begun. This is a turning point because Arjuna has approached Krishna and asked him to become his guru. So he is saying, I'm all worried, I'm anxious. And Krishna tells him, cut out your lamentation with the power of knowledge. Okay? And what happens is, he gives him this knowledge. Remember last time I told you that you are the most important knowledge that Krishna gives here, so that Arjuna can overcome compassion, is that you are not this body. Right? This body is made up of the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air and ether, and it is temporary. It will be definitely destroyed. But you are actually the soul, which is your self or the consciousness, which is in your heart area. It is in your heart and it has control over your entire body. And there is also a subtle body, which is made up of your mind, your intelligence and your false ego. So we will understand a lot about mind, intelligence, false ego, true ego, all these things in the later chapters. Now what you must understand is that when somebody dies, the gross body is destroyed, it is temporary, but the subtle body and the soul, they will immediately go to the next gross body and there will be a rebirth. The same soul will be born again and it will carry all the subtle elements with it. Okay, so we had learnt. I have also referred to Swami the Mukundananda's videos, and I am also sharing whatever I have learned from his videos also. So he has spoken about how we come to know that I, when I say I, once you have read the Gita, you should be able to think of the I as not your body. You should be able to think of I as your consciousness, which never dies, which is eternal. And that is one of the main secrets of being able to get all the benefits of the Gita, which I had promised you in the beginning. So once you start thinking that I am not this body, I am not even this mind, I am actually the consciousness which is everlasting. So let's quickly look at this. What is it that makes a difference between living things and non-living things? Can someone tell me? Yes, Niranjan.
Living things can move and it needs water and air to live. But non-living things do not need air. Won't move, don't need air, water, nothing. Don't need food.
Yes, very good. Very good. And that's good. So living things can move. They plants don't move, but are they living things? Plants are living things?
Yes, teacher.
Yeah. Plants are living things. Animals are living things. People, we are also living things. And what is it that different from in us, which is not there in the living things? What is it that we have? When somebody dies, what do we say? Have you heard that we say that the soul has left the body? Have you heard when something dies, when a living thing dies? There is a spelling mistake here, children. Thing spelling is wrong. There are some errors, so please ignore that. Just look at the concept I'm telling you. So what I'm trying to say is that the living things actually have a consciousness or a soul, which I am talking about, which leaves the body when it dies. If you ask a scientist, they will say that living things are made up of a whole composition of carbon, oxygen, hydrogen and all that, and they are not able to teach people, to teach the world that there is something called soul, because they couldn't discover it. Only through meditation the saints know, and even if you will sit and really think, it is just a knowledge that there is a soul within you and within all living things which make them living. There is a consciousness. Okay, so the body actually is just like a car, and you are like you are actually really the driver. So when you say I, you don't talk about, suppose you're sitting in a car and you're driving, you will not say I am the car. You know that you are the person who is driving. Similarly, this body is like a vehicle which the soul is just taking on for this birth. After this birth is over, it will take another body. So we existed, so the soul has been always there. It has been there even before our birth. The soul has been there. And even after the death of this body, this soul will continue to be there. This is an important point that we learn from the Gita. As the embodied soul will pass in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, same way the soul will also pass from one body to another body. And that is why a person who has self-realized or he understood this, he doesn't get bewildered or he doesn't get extremely sad when he hears about death, because he knows that it is not the death of the soul, it is just the death of the body. So we had finished till text 13 last class. Today we are going to do 14 onwards. So in text 14, Krishna says, O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress. Now this is very, very interesting, children. Listen carefully. You must remember that happiness and distress, sukh and dukh, they are coming and going just like winter and summer seasons. So if you are learned or if you understand that, Krishna says you must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. You should not be someone who is trying to hold on to happiness or who is trying to push away sadness. You should be calm and let the happiness and sadness come and go like seasons. So he says, Matra sparshastu kaunteya, shitoshna sukha dukkhada, agamapa nityas, tam stitik chasva bharata. So he actually, the most important thing is, he says that you must simply tolerate the sadnesses and the happinesses that come in your life without being disturbed. Now this is difficult, but with practice You can do it, and that is what you must try. Always remember that when a happiness comes, it is not forever. It will surely end. When a sadness comes also, it is not forever. It will definitely end. So, you must learn to see happiness and distress both as temporary. They are temporary. They will come and go. So, just treat them like guests. Welcome them, even if it is sadness, even if it is happiness. Experience of happiness and misery, you have to tolerate them. That is the most important. Second important thing you learn after learning that the soul is what you are, not the body. So to accomplish or achieve anything, you will have to learn to control and tolerate the urges which the body senses are telling you to go for. So you have 5 sense organs. Your eyes want to see beautiful things all the time. Your tongue wants to taste delicious things. Your ears want to hear, great music or whatever, something nice. Your skin wants to feel the best of, the weather, or you want to feel the best of experiences. So all these sense organs, they will keep on attracting you and asking you to go after sense objects. But once you have learned the Gita, or you have meditated and understood that all these joy that you get from sense objects, that is which you get from the objects of Prakriti, they are all temporary and nothing lasts. So the more you give the objects of senses to these senses, you give them more of these objects. For example, you feel like doing something and you just go and do it. What happens is that the desire will only increase. Suppose you feel like eating a pizza, you just go and eat a pizza immediately. You don't keep keep a little bit of tolerance. It's not good for you, and still what will happen? The urge to have it will be more and more and more. It will increase, and this will lead to greed. So that is the reason why Krishna says that you have to remember that the senses are actually cheaters. They will try to tempt you to go after the sense objects, but you have to learn that all this is temporary. Even if you get the joy for your sense organs for some time, it will only lead to more misery. If you keep on always going after sense objects, you are sure to become entrapped by greed, and after that it is surely going to lead you to misery. So in text, that is all what text 14 says. In text 15, Krishna says that, O best among men Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress becomes steady. And once you become steady, you are eligible and ready for liberation. And this is actually the Sankhya Darshan. That is why this is also called the chapter of Sankhya Yoga. It tells you that if you enjoy Prakriti, constantly giving in without tolerating the happiness and misery, it will lead to more misery. So if the Purush can stop this Prakriti or this nature to hanker after sense enjoyments, then this material Prakriti releases it. That is, it will release misery to you. So what you have to do is, once you are indifferent to happiness and sadness, then you can launch yourself out of this material existence. You can be in transcendental bliss, or you can stay in a spiritual realm, which as you're learning Gita, you will surely and slowly do it. It will come to you. You will be able to be steady. You will be able to be focused. Now in text 16, Krishna says that those who are seers of truth, who know the truth, they have concluded that this material body, it has no endurance. Means it is temporary. And the soul, it has no change. It's not going to grow old or die or anything. It will always stay eternal. And he says that the real, it will always exist, and the temporary is asat. It is going to die. Now I want to tell you another short story here. Okay, this is a story of Guru Nanak. So once Guru Nanak, he was returning from Arabia, and he meets Babar on the way, King Babar. And Babar, when he sees the elevated fakir, wow, Guru Nanak has come, he's a fakir, he welcomed him and he gave him a drink which is intoxicating. And when, Guru Nanak used to always be chanting the name of God. He had always God's name in his lips and in his mind. So he was, constantly happy because of that. He knew that this world is temporary. He was very humble and his mind was always engaged in thinking of the Lord. So he says this verse, he says bhang, he gives him bhang. Bhang is an intoxicating drink, which if you drink, you will feel all intoxicated, but after some time, you will feel miserable. Okay, so he says that bhang tambhaku chotara, utara jaye parabhat, in the morning it will be all gone. Nama Kumari Nanaka chadi rahe din raat. But the name which he is chanting, the holy name, it is always giving me joy day and night. And this you will be able to experience only once you start chanting and keeping yourself in connection or in yoga with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Once you do that,